Good morning, Zio here, and today we're talking about Pokemon. Let's get into it, shall we? So today we're going to talk about Pokemon Sword and Shield. We've talked about it a little bit in the past. We are specifically talking about the expansions and the fact that people are slightly upset. Why are we talking about this? Because I ran across a meme. That's why we're all this entire video is spawned from a meme. That's right. So I was surfing the good book, right? And I ran across a meme from one of the Pokemon pages that I'm following, or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, and you know, it essentially was like, people upset. The gist of the meme was people upset because Game Freak cut, a bunch of Pokemon. Then Game Freak adds like 200 Pokemon. People get upset over it, kind of deal. Like people just aren't happy regardless, even though it's ignoring everything else about the entire situation. So the whole point of this video is to kind of explain that for those who can't seem to really understand why people would be upset over the fact that they are now adding a bunch of those Pokemon that they previously cut, and the reasons behind why people are actually upset behind that, as well as my thoughts on it, because my thoughts have kind of evolved a little bit. I saw it trending, decided to just sort of dive into it while recording myself diving into it and just going off of it with that. Of course, since then, I have looked more into it, and my thoughts have slightly changed a little bit, especially about like cutting moves and some other stuff. So yeah, it's gonna get different, I guess. But yeah, so let's go ahead and just first start talking about this, the DLC packs. I've seen several people actually complain about the fact that there's going to be an expansion for Pokemon. It's going to be $30. They're going to be completely somewhat unique expansions. We're going to have one for Sword, we're going to have one for Shield, and they're going to have two different, things. So, you're going to have the Isle of Armor in one, and the Crown Tundra in the other. They're going to be two different territories, essentially, going to be able to explore it like anywhere else, and they're going to be bringing more about 200 plus Pokemon and new legendaries Pokemon into the game that currently aren't in the game. Now, why were people upset about losing the Pokemon to begin with? Quick, just oversimplified version. Game Freak said, we can't do it because we ain't got the time, we ain't got the manpower to make all these Pokemon from scratch. And if that was the truth, I don't think anybody would have cared, but it came out that most of the assets for Pokemon Sun and Moon, for Sword and Shield, came from Sun and Moon Pokemon models for the Pokemon themselves, and so some of the trainer assets as well, as their movements and other things came from the previous title on the 3DS, which eliminates quite a bit of the work when you can just import and just get all that information there. You're not technically building it from scratch. The only thing you're doing at that point is giving it new polish. And somebody, of course, went out there and modded the game to be able to have access to all the Pokemon from Sun and Moon actually in Sword and Shield within, I think it was weeks after release. It wasn't very long, and that was just one person doing it, so there was really no excuse for Game Freak not to do that. However, the biggest issue is the fact that Game Freak lied about it. In my opinion, if Game Freak wants to cut the decks, okay, go for it. I mean, it's sad to see some of my favorites, of course, leave, not having access to some of, especially like, say, I don't think Bulbasaur was actually set up to be in the final release, and I haven't checked to actually see if Bulbasaur is going to be in with the new release yet, or I'm sorry, with the new set, or if coming out for something else. But that was my very first Pokemon right there. So it would be sad to not be able to bring Bulba along with me, of course. But, that's neither here nor there. There's a lot of reasons to why they would want to cut the Dex. And I'm totally fine with those reasonings, as long as they're following them, of course. We'll get into that, but excuse me, sorry. I'm apparently having issues this morning, like always. I always have issues this morning. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm working till like midnight every single night, I would do this after work when I'm actually awake. But instead, we're chugging coffee here. And we're talking about, what is it? A children's game and why we have issues with it. Anyway, Karen, shut up. So here's the thing. Game Freak also said that they had no plans to ever release those cut Pokemon. That's why people are upset now. We can go over here, and you can clearly see in an interview, Masuda says, "We now have no plans to make Pokemon that are missing in the Galar Pokedex in game available. This is an approach that we want to continue with Pokemon games in the future. Of course, up till now, it has been possible to encounter every Pokemon in every game, so people had to transfer it from older games via Pokebank to the new games, for example." And that's fair. I'm fine with that. There was no need to lie about it or anything, because that just sort of explains why they want to cut Pokemon to begin with and why they're not going to add them later. But then they're coming around and they're doing that exact thing. They're essentially taking the Bethesda route, saying, "We will never do this. We have no plans to do this. We won't do this." And then coming around and, "Oh, by the way, we're not doing this because reasons." Yeah. Anyway, but the other, of course, issue is this is a complicated web too that people are complaining about, because not only are you paying for the games, right, and you're paying for the DLC, which I have no problem with. Pokemon on the Switch on an actual console. I think the next evolution for Pokemon at this point is to evolve into expansion packs. That would probably be the best way to go about it, instead of doing what they normally do, because normally they'd release 2 versions, right? And then a third version like a year or so later, or 6 months later, that's sort of like a mishmash or a combination of all the other 2 in terms of what Pokemon are available, with the exact same story and then some extra stuff at the end, So, or they just make, like they did the last time, which I kind of hate when they do that, but when they do like Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, or Black and White 2, making the same game over and just, anyway. But I forget it. Anyway, yeah, I have issues with that. Having a third version, that's okay. You want to go away from that. You want to go into expansion packs. It's more manageable. You can sort of tailor the experience to, continue the same groove of, you've got 2 games that are very similar with different Pokemon in it, and then the games offer something different through the expansions that only one game has over the other. That's a fine thing for me. Of course, there are people who are complaining about that, which is the age-old debate of, I shouldn't have to buy 2 copies in order to collect the entire Dex. The whole game has been predicated on that system since day one, right? We had red and blue. I had red, my brother had blue. Yellow came out, I got yellow. And then we had gold and silver. I had gold, my brother had silver. And I know not everybody has that. They don't have the brother or the sister who wants to play the game. I'm sorry. I really don't know what else to say. I don't, other than buying both versions, and then you're going to have to buy both different expansion passes. You kind of have no other choice at that point in time, right? So, I mean, that's one of the biggest things about the GTS that I really did enjoy, because later in life, my brother's not playing these games, of course, but I still am. The kids, of course, want to play these games now, so that gives me somebody else to give another version to, of course, and just trade with them to complete dexes and things. But not everybody has that, and the GTS is sort of, a lifesaver when it comes to that, because it gives you the ability to, you know, do those trades and get the Pokemon that you want to get. But right now it's looking like that you can go ahead and you have to pay for a service. You've got to pay for Pokemon Home, got to pay for Pokemon Bank, you got to pay for the right to access the Nintendo servers to actually do the trading, and it's a big complicated mess. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it. I will talk to you later. See ya.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment, smash that like button, and always subscribe for more. And of course, there are other videos floating around somewhere on the screen, so click one of those and see if you can find something that suits your fancy. Till then, I'll see you later. Bye.